I'll see you guys at dinner time, where I'm going to share with you something I've never talked about on the channel, and that's the day I almost died from eating one meal. What is up, everybody? Day 3 of the Carnivore Diet Ground Beef Challenge, and it's 1:30 p.m. I got 1.5 pounds of ground beef. Don't think I'll be able to eat all this right now, but I'm going to give it a shot.
Good luck.
I ate probably just over 1 pound of that. It's almost gone. It's good. You know, when you're really hungry, ground beef tastes just as good as a ribeye. I'll see you guys at dinner time, where I'm going to share with you something I've never talked about on the channel, and that's the day I almost died from eating one meal. It was a horrible experience, and I can't believe Cassie and I have never talked about it. But I'll fill you in at dinner time. I'll see you then. Oh, you want some of that, you? Dinner time. It is 7 p.m. on the dot. Well, no, 7:05. Video from yesterday just went live about an hour ago. I already got some comments from you guys, the WED comments, watching every day. I'm going to answer those for you guys here in a few minutes. Boom. Check it out. We'll see if I can finish this off. This is 1 pound of ground beef drained. And I had a few questions that weren't WED about why you're draining the fat. And actually, I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to start keeping about 50% of the fat in the ground beef. I did, I tasted a little bit with the fat. That's pretty good. I melted a 1/4 stick of butter on here, salted it up, and here's my meal. I want to finish this up so I can tell you about that story about the meal that almost killed me. Let's do this. I can't do anymore. I got a little bit left here that will be going to Brisket, the carnivore dog. Oh, I am full. That's the first time during this challenge I've had 2 meals, and it's a good thing I'm full, because I do not want to eat after dinner, No sitting around watching TV later, snacking, It'd be real common for me to sit down and have a couple hard-boiled eggs or some bacon, or even dinner, 9, 10 o'clock at night watching TV. Not doing that this month. So many of you have said, Larry, don't eat after dinner time. Once the sun goes down, nothing else goes in your mouth. And I'm trying to stick to that. So let me tell you guys about the time one meal almost killed me. Okay, hey guys, most of you know I went to rehab. It's been over 10 years now for alcohol. I was gone almost 6 months, came home, and soon after that, Cassie's appendix burst. And she had to have emergency surgery, got out of the hospital, and she was cut from her sternum all the way down to her waist. Yeah, it was brutal. They had to clean her all out, it exploded. All that septic infection went all over her insides, and very scary. About 5 months later, she was basically fully recovered. And that's when our daughter met that complete psychopath that threatened to kill our entire family. Those of you who know our past history, my mom was murdered by her stepdad. My sister was murdered by her husband. And we don't take threats lightly. And we ended up making plans to move to South Carolina. Because I've said in previous videos, if you have somebody that's kamikaze coming after you, you have a couple choices. Forget having the police deal with it, because that just does not work. You can either disappear or you can kill them, and face the consequences. So once we made the decision to move down south, move 1,000 miles away, where I went to the rehab here in South Carolina, Cassie had given her notice at the casino she worked at, and we had like 2 weeks left of health insurance. And while I was at the Overcomers, the rehab I was at, I worked out every day. They had a little gym, and I thought I had a hernia down in my crotch, like in my groin area. It was hurting me really bad every single day. And before we lost our health insurance, I wanted to go get it checked out. So I went in, they really couldn't find anything wrong. But while they had me in there, I just turned 40. They wanted me to do a colonoscopy. While we had the insurance, I was like, okay. So he goes in, and plus I was interested to see what my colon looked like after 10 years of hardcore drinking. A couple fifths a day of Jägermeister. What's my colon going to look like, right? So I had the colonoscopy. They ended up finding 3 big polyps, and they removed them. As I'm waking up from the procedure, the nurse comes in and discusses, like the aftercare. She asked me if I was thirsty. I said, yeah. I hadn't eaten in 2.5 days. I had to drink that nasty stuff to clear out your colon, before the procedure. And she goes, you want a Coke? And I said, yeah, awesome. So she brought me a can of Coke while we're sitting there discussing everything. I drank that, and I was starving. At this time in our life, I never had any experience with fasting or anything like that. So I was really hungry. We told her we planned on going out to eat as soon as we left the hospital. And, asked her, can I eat anything? Am I good? She gave me the green light. She said, you can eat whatever you want. And that was that. So Cassie and I went to this restaurant called Adrian's, famous Mexican restaurant in Hammond, Indiana. Been around since Cassie was a little girl. And we went in there. They had the best nachos, right? So Cassie and I ordered up 2 big plates of nachos. I remember chicken and steak. And we gorged, We definitely overdid it. Well, we went home. And during this time, because that psychopath was after our daughter, Cassie was staying in Michigan with her dad, with Holly and little Larry. I was at our house, which we were renting from her dad in Hammond, Indiana, and I was packing everything up for us to move. And I had a shotgun leaned up against the wall right next to the front door, because this guy who threatened our family, he was a hardcore gang member. I mean, total drug addict, bum, had nothing to lose, So I had that shotgun waiting for anybody to come over. He was furious that we got Holly away from him. He had full control of her, and we pretty much ripped her from his grasp. So I didn't know what he was capable of, and I was ready for it. Well, anyway, over the course of the next 2 days, I had this pain in my abdomen, and it got worse and worse and worse. It got to the point where I was on the floor on my knees, and I called Cassie, and I said, up in Michigan, I said, baby, I can't stand up. Well, I ended up calling an ambulance. And Cassie's about 3 hours away. Ambulance came, they got me to the hospital, told the doctor I just had a colonoscopy a few days ago. Well, it turns out the doctor who had removed the polyps on my colon, he clipped them too close to my colon wall. So my colon was actually leaking inside, pretty much leaking poop, all over my organs. And so he told me, we have to get you an emergency surgery right now. This is like 3:30 in the morning. I called our son, Cody, who lived right behind us. I said, I'm on my way to the hospital. Can you, meet me there? Well, he showed up right before I was going to go in for the emergency surgery. And I was gotta admit, I was pretty scared, and of course I wanted Cassie there, but that was impossible. So I told Cody I loved him. See you on the other side. He's like, don't worry, Dad, when you wake up, everybody will be here. So they took me in, and they cut me from my sternum all the way down to my waist, exactly like they did Cassie. And that was freaking brutal. But they had to go in and they had to clean all that poop, all that waste that had been leaking. They repaired the leak, sewed me back up, and I was absolutely miserable. Never had a surgery in my life, and I was furious with the doctor. Well, we ended up trying to sue the hospital, and we got a really good lawyer, and the lawyer looked at the case, looked at all the medical records of the procedure, and it turns out that they didn't actually do anything wrong. They made no mistakes. There was basically no negligence on their part. They did everything right. And the waiver you sign when you go in for a colonoscopy, that's why they have you sign it, so you can't sue them. 1 out of every 1,500 cases goes wrong. And I happen to be one of those people. which totally sucked. But years later, when Cassie was diagnosed with her colon cancer and she had a colonoscopy, the aftercare, the little visit we had with the nurse right afterwards, was totally different. She told Cassie to maybe eat a few eggs later that night and keep the amount of food she ate to a minimum, at least for a couple days. Totally different than the aftercare that, I had after my colonoscopy. And that's when it dawned on me. That's where they messed up. Her giving me she gave me a Coke, an acidy Coke, and then told me to eat whatever I want. And I went out and picked out. That one meal is actually what I think, perforated my colon. I'm sure the doctor clipped the polyps, a little too close to my colon wall. But when I ate that huge meal, I'm just assuming that, it gave out. Anyway, I almost died. Doctor said if I hadn't made it to the hospital 2-3 more hours, I would have been in big trouble. So, and man, that recovery sucks. Getting cut from my sternum all the way down to my waist. And Cassie had just been through it. So it was her turn to take care of me, and that was no fun. But for those of you who don't know what happened with that whole situation, Cassie and I sat down and did a video. I think the thumbnail said, "What would you do?" And we talk about, when our family our lives were threatened. And that was right after I got saved and came to the Lord Jesus Christ. But, we had a rough year and a half there after I got sober. And, but by the grace of God, I stayed sober and, but that one meal, man, almost killed me. Adrian's nachos. But I've never talked about that here on the channel, which kind of blows me away. Anyway, I wanted to answer a few of your WED questions, watching every day. All right, the first one is from Theresa, YouTube, watching every day. Great challenge. I really appreciate you watching every day. All of you guys, really cool. Nancy Haggard says, watching every day. You're correct never to give up. I'm challenged by a spouse who does not eat our way. How do you deal with little Larry having other food in the house? And by the way, how old is he? Well, little Larry actually eats pretty healthy. He is 20 years old. He's 6'2", and just a couple months ago, he started eating what I would consider a weightlifter's diet. Very low fat, high protein, barely eats any sugar, high carbohydrates. And he's been exercising every day. He looks great. When he actually gets back to the gym, he's going to be huge. He's a giant. That's what we always say. But so it hasn't been really hard, with his food in the house. Now, it was when he was eating a lot of junk food, pizzas in the freezer and, but after I'm on the carnivore diet a while, those cravings go away. And since February, I haven't been dealing with cravings. Cassie, she's on Keto now. The other day, she sauteed some mushrooms, and those were looking really good. But funny thing about mushrooms, whenever I eat them, they go right through me. They come out the same way they looked when they go in. It's like my body does not digest them at all. Love in Texas 03, watching every day. No question, just chatting. I've started the ground beef challenge. It's going to be interesting. We can do this. Absolutely, we can. The dinner I just ate, I really wasn't in the mood for it, but I was hungry. I kind of powered through it. So, yeah, we can do this, Love in Texas. And I appreciate you watching every day. I got two more. I got Vosborn 8094. God is so good. I was just thinking about eating sugar and carbs, and then your video showed up. Thank you for sharing, watching every day this month. It sure helps me to not feel alone. Well, that is so cool, Vosborn. I'm glad you're getting something out of these daily videos. As far as YouTube goes, they're not going to do excellent as far as, getting massive amounts of views. And I'm being a little selfish because I'm doing it to keep myself accountable. But I know, because I read you guys' comments, a lot of you are drawing strength from them too, and that is totally cool. So I really appreciate that. I don't know if you have Facebook, Vosborn. We have a private Facebook group, Carnivore Quest community. You'll never feel alone there. Full of good people. They're the best. And this last one's from James Polini. He didn't put WED, but I wanted to address this. He said, I noticed that I like my ground beef very rare with salt. Just tastes better almost raw. Now, that's pretty interesting. I might actually try that tomorrow. Not cook it as much. Let's see what I think. Well, that's it for me today, guys. I know these daily vlogs aren't like super exciting, especially when I'm eating the same thing every single day. There's not even a variety in the food I'm showing you guys. So I really do appreciate each and every one of you who stop by every day. It means the world to me. 3, 4, 5,000 views is fine with me. I don't need any more than that. You guys rock. We'll see you in the next one. Remember, no sugar, no carbs, and no cheating. Later.